Go, please.
So hello and welcome. First, I would like to thank you all for your patience in dealing with technical difficulties we were facing last week. I would like to welcome all the participants again from Slovenia, Italy, France, Indonesia, United States, Brazil, and China. We are happy to see so many of you participating in this webinar today. So my name is Jana Potočnik, and I am a co-founder of Institute Brainspotting Slovenia, together with Sabina Gombac, Tamara Trobentar, and Mina Paš. We are all integrative psychotherapists and brainspotting psychotherapists and mentors. Institute Brainspotting Slovenia was founded to offer trainings in the field of deep trauma work and brainspotting method. Our mission is to contribute to the quality in the field of trauma treatment, trauma therapy, as well as to raise the individual and collective awareness about the importance of healing trauma. So this is the third webinar we organized with the purpose to support psychotherapists and other mental health professionals in these challenging times of COVID-19 epidemic. So the first one was in March. We were hosting Monica Baumann with the lecture How to Offer Online Brain Spotting Treatment During the Current Acute Situation of COVID-19. In April, we were hosting Mario Salvador on existential and traumatic aspects of the pandemic, cues for psychotherapeutic interventions. And you can watch the recording of Mario's teaching on our YouTube channel and Facebook page, Brainspotting Slovenia. And today we are very happy and honored to be hosting Santiago Brand from Colombia with the topic heart rate variability, biofeedback, breathing for anxiety control. Santiago is a sport and clinical psychologist with 15 years of experience in brain mapping, biofeedback, and neurofeedback, and 4 years of experiences in working with brain spotting method. Santiago has worked with the Colombian Olympic Committee and has lectured in over 10 countries about trauma and the brain, among many other topics in neuroscience. He has been the coordinator of Neuroscience Laboratory of the Ministry of Sport. He is a university professor and co-author of the book, The Power of Brain Spotting, among many other publications. So now I will give the words to you, Santiago. Santiago, welcome.
Thank you, Jana, and thank you to Brainspotting Slovenia for this initiative. Just want to make sure that everybody's hearing me okay, and I have begged the universe for things to work today, so hopefully everything will go nice and smooth. And I'm really excited to teach here today and lecture here today, because one of my objectives since I learned about brain spotting is to bridge the gap between neuroscience and brain spotting, and to find out what happens in the brain as we are processing trauma with brain spotting. We've had the chance to do some initial research with Deb Antinori and Sue Pinko in New York in the United States. And some of those initial findings were presented to David himself. And we're very, very excited about the possibilities that this is bringing. And we're working with Mario as well in Spain to develop some additional training so that we can uncover the secrets of why brain spotting is so effective and why it changes brain activity in such an exquisite way. And I want to talk to them about heart rate variability because it's a biofeedback modality which I find extremely effective for the treatment not only of trauma, but also for anxiety, stress, depression, and other conditions. And it's a low cost and cost-effective intervention that any mental health practitioner can incorporate and integrate into their interventions. And so that's what I want to mention today. And I want to talk about...
Santiago?
Yes.
Just a second. I got the information that some participants are still waiting to be accepted.
Oh, okay. Let me go ahead and
in the waiting room.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. So as I was saying, heart rate variability it's a very exquisite, low cost and cost effective intervention that any of you here can incorporate into your work with brain spotting or other forms of intervention that you utilize in your daily work. And I like it because heart rate variability is a way of optimizing the communication between the heart and the brain, and also optimizing the interactions between the heart and the brain. And as we will see, trauma is going to affect us at the physiological level, meaning it's going to change the way our heart behaves and acts. And if we change our heart rhythmicity, our brain is not going to process the information in the same way. So heart rate variability is a way for you to strengthen and reinforce and further optimize what you do with brain spotting. And you can use it before brain spotting. You can use it at the same time you're doing brain spotting, or after a brain spotting session, or in between, brain spotting sessions. So this technique is going to provide you with a whole new plethora of options that can allow you to further increase the reach that you have for people with trauma or anxiety or stress or anger or dissociation, or you name it. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to start with the presentation. So just want to make sure that okay, so when we're doing heart rate variability biofeedback, or we're doing any biofeedback modality, or we're doing brain spotting, we are working with the autonomic nervous system, meaning we're going to have a resource or we're going to have an activation. And in many ways, biofeedback and brain spotting are very similar in that you have resourcing or you have activation, and you can play with both to find a way to reach the subcortical brain, open up those capsules where all those traumas have been held throughout the years, and just let the energy flow in a controlled manner. So with heart rate variability, we can further optimize the release of the energy, and we can have a more profound and more meaningful processing of different traumas and memories. And this also changes the physiology, which at the same time changes your neurology, meaning your body is going to change what it's doing, and your brain is going to change what it's doing. And we're interacting, we're interfering, and we are affecting both the sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. So when we engage both branches, you give the clients the possibility to gain some of that control, and at the same time relinquish that control when they are processing trauma. So they can choose how they want to process the energy, and how far they want to go, and how deep they want to go. And what I like about HRV biofeedback is that it uses technology to show the information in real time. So with the integration of technology, what we're doing is we are making the brain spotting process a reality. And we are allowing the client, and we're seeing in real time what is happening in the body and the brain. So it's not such an abstract concept anymore. It's not, it works because it works. We can say it works because look at what happens at your brain waves, look what happens with your heart rate, look at what happens with your muscle tension, look at what happens with your cortisol in real time. And that it's a very important added value that we want to provide here. Now, as I was saying, we use the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. So your sympathetic is what gets activated the moment you're traumatized and afterwards. So the days, hours, years, and months that, that take place after the initial traumatic event are going to play an important role in activating your sympathetic branch. Therefore, if you're hypervigilant, if you're angry, if you're anxious, and sometimes you don't know why, what's going to happen is that your sympathetic branch is going to be overly activated. So it's like it's being on guard 24/7. And that's not a good thing because you're not going to be able to stay calm and relaxed and balanced. Now, on the other hand, you can have parasympathetic activation as well. And you don't want too much of either. You don't want sympathetic tone, meaning your sympathetic branch is active all the time. And at the same token, you don't want parasympathetic tone, which means having your parasympathetic branch activated all the time. You want a balance between the two. And that's one of the ways we achieve that balance is with brain spotting. The other way we can achieve it and further strengthen that process is with heart rate variability biofeedback. So your parasympathetic is going to be your rest and digest, but if your parasympathetic is overly activated, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel unmotivated, you're going to feel helpless, you're going to feel depressed, you're going to feel many things. And therefore, we want to balance those two out. Now, the main concept here, the main issue with heart rate variability is that your heart rhythmicity is going to affect the same pathways, the same roads to the brain differently, depending on how you feel. If you're traumatized, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you're angry, if you are tired, okay, whatever negative emotion you feel is going to dysregulate your heart. And when your heart is dysregulated, you are going to affect those pathways in a negative way, meaning your brain is going to process perception and is going to see the world as a negative place, as a dangerous place, and your amygdala in your limbic system is going to be overactivated. You're not going to trust people. You're not going to trust the world. You're going to think everything is bad. When we change that with brain spotting and when we further optimize the process with heart rate variability, your heart rhythmicity is going to be different. It's going to be coherent. It's going to be organized. And those are keywords: coherence and organization. If your heart is coherent and organized, so is going to be your brain. And therefore, your perception of the world, your perception of what happened to you, your perception of what's happening now, it's absolutely different, okay? So you're gonna perceive the world as a more positive place. You're gonna act from a loving perspective. You're gonna trust people more. And you are going to change the meaning of the trauma. You are not going to think that what happened to you is a punishment from God or the universe. You're not going to think that what happened to you because you deserved it. You're no longer going to think that that what happened to you is some kind of a bad karma that you have, and that you're meant to feel bad for the rest of your life. You're gonna feel empowered. You're not gonna feel like a victim anymore. And that's what we want. We want to empower people. So we want to take them from being victimized to being empowered. And the combination of technology and brain spotting gives us that option. It's gonna provide us with that. And we're gonna talk about this heart-brain relationship as we go. So the heart and the brain are mainly going to communicate via electrical impulses. The heartbeat produces an electrical impulse that is going to reach the brain, and the brain is going to produce an electrical impulse that is going to look like a brainwave. And it's the interaction between the electrical activity from the brain and the electrical activity from the heart what's going to make us feel good or bad. we're feeling bad, it's because the electrical activity from the brain is dysregulated and the electrical activity from the heart is dysregulated. When they're both coherent, meaning the heart and the brain are friends, everything goes well. Everything goes our way. We're happy, we're loving, we're balanced, we have inner peace. You know, people name it in different ways, but the general sensation is one of joy. And we can, with the technology, we have the ability to understand that different emotions produce different brain patterns and different heart patterns. Meaning, if you're angry, your heart rhythmicity, the electricity of your heart is going to be one. If you're appreciative of things, if you're happy, if you're joyful, if you forgive, your heart electricity is going to be different. And it's that voltage, is that message that gets to the brain that what makes the difference. So for instance, if you notice this graph right here, anger is going to increase your overall heart rate. So your heart is going to beat faster and is going to be more disorganized. On the other hand, if you are relaxed, you're going to have a different heart pattern, a different rhythmicity to your heart, but it's not totally effective. Now, when we practice appreciation, meaning we are grateful for the things we have in life, meaning we are aware that there are bad things in the world, but that we can control most of them, and that we have a choice in choosing how we feel, we reach appreciation. And appreciation is the best emotion, is the best concept that you can give your body and your brain, because that's what helps your body.
Santiago?
Yes.
Okay, Santiago, I heard that some people are still waiting in the waiting room. If you can just check. Okay, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. Well, I don't see anybody in the waiting list. Let's see. Manage participants. Let me go to the chat for a second. I have been adding them as they are, as they come in. I don't see anybody on the waiting list, but if I get the message, I'll make sure that I do allow them to come in. So I'll be on the lookout, because I've been doing that as I'm talking.
Okay. Yeah, you just need to accept them.
Yeah, I get a window to pop up and I immediately add them. So I'll do that. I'll keep doing that. Now, as I was saying, different emotions are going to convey different rhythmicity and electrical activity of the heart and the brain. So we need to attach and work hand in hand with what we're feeling and what we're thinking. And we do some of that indirectly with Brainspotting. When we are processing, we do it more directly with heart rate variability. That's probably one of the main differences between the two. Not to say that they're antagonists, it's just to say that they're different and they can complement each other in different ways. So again, when we are talking about heart rate variability, we're talking about the communication between the heart and the brain. And that's what makes or breaks a therapeutic process. If we get the heart and the brain to talk to each other, then we are on a path to healing. If we don't get the heart and the brain to communicate with each other, then we're on a path to continued dysregulation for that client. And again, we can do it with brain spotting, we can do it with heart rate variability, we can do it with neurofeedback. To me, the more techniques you integrate, the better. So I'm not going to stop here because this is mostly the physiology of breathing and it's not a class on that. I want to stop on what trauma does to the brain. So I want to show you some EEGs. My main work is on quantitative electroencephalography, or a brain map. I want to show you what trauma does to the brain. And this is to illustrate the point that people are different in the way they process trauma from a cognitive perspective, from an emotional perspective, but also from a brain and neurological perspective. I could have 3, 4, 5 people with the same kind of trauma. Let's say, I have people who survived an accident or a plane crash or a natural disaster. Even though they underwent the same trauma, their brains are going to process the information differently. And this is the interesting point, because while we can use the same approach, inside window, outside window, or vergence, when we use brain spotting, what we're going to see is how brain spotting is helping change the brain activity for the better. So this is a female who was the victim of sexual assault. And we have two types of brain waves. The brain is going to produce either slow brain waves or fast brain waves. Okay, and it produces slow and fast brain waves. But what I'm getting at here is that if you have excess fast brain waves, you have a person who's more hypervigilant, anxious, angry, defensive. If you have mostly slow brain waves, you have somebody who's dissociating, who's tired, who's helpless, and who's depressed. Okay, so we could have a little bit of both. And what I'm going to show you is that these brains have either too much of the fast brain waves or too little or too much of the slow brain waves, and what the implications are. So again, this is a victim of sexual assault, and the fast brain waves are slow. I'm sorry, are small, are very little. So if you see here, you can see very, very little brain waves, which are fast. And this is what we would call a persistent fast rhythm, meaning this person is on the go all the time. This is a woman, this is a lady who's very anxious, who's very hypervigilant, who's who's on high alert all the time, meaning her limbic system, her amygdala, is saying danger, 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 danger all the time. And that's not a good thing. Okay, so because she's not going to be able to feel calm. So she's more activated than she's actually resourced. And the brain will show us that. So this is the raw EEG. This is the unfiltered EEG. That's the first step in the brain mapping process. But we can convert that into images that are easier to understand. Now, the slow brain waves are going to be represented by these burgundy and the red. And the fast brain waves are going to start at the yellow peaks and are going to go all the way to the blue peaks. And the higher the amplitude of the peaks means the more of those frequencies we have. So if you notice, in the yellow is alpha brain waves. In green, beta brain waves, and in blue, gamma brain waves. And when you have a lot of alpha fast brain waves, a lot of beta, and a lot of gamma brain waves, it means your tendency is to be on guard. You're anxious, you are hypervigilant, okay? And we can also see that in terms of colored maps. The more purple you have, the more you have of those frequencies. The more blue you have, the less you have of those frequencies. And in essence, what we want to see here is green. The greener the maps, the more balanced that brain is, okay? And in our initial findings in the research that we did with Deb and Sue in New York, we had some people with a lot of red or a lot of blue before the brain spotting. And after they did the brain spotting, they went back to green. So meaning that in just one session, their brains were getting more balanced. They were feeling more at peace, more empowered, more calm, happier, you name it. So brain spotting does have that effect on the brain. What we need to find out is whether that's long lasting, meaning one session is good, but it's statistically, it's not enough to prove that the gains are sustained. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure over time the brain activity of the person to see sustainability of the gains. And you can also see maps of topographies or images of the inside of the brain. And this is the inside of this lady's brain. In the areas that are highlighted in red are the networks that are activated overly activated and dysregulated as a consequence of her traumas. So we can see the right temporal region, which is common for trauma. And you can also see it down here on the 3D map, because this software can produce subcortical images, cortical images, and 3D images. And we can look at it from 3 different perspectives. Again, the technology is allowing us to see what brain spotting does so beautifully. And one of the reasons I love brain spotting is because it's really effective. My point is, I want to show why it is so effective, and I want to prove it to the world via this technology. So we're seeing activation of the frontal region of the brain, which is your amygdala and limbic system being overactive, and the right temporal region of the brain, meaning this side of the brain, is also overactive, which means she's hypervigilant. Let's look at other ones. Now, this is another person with a different trauma, and you will see that while she has some fast brain waves, like the previous person, she also has some slow brain waves, which are higher in amplitude. Slower brain waves, a little bigger than the fast brain waves. In the blue square, you can see the fast brain waves, which are small. And in the green square, you can see the slow brain waves, which are a little higher. And the characteristic for this person, it's a woman who was a victim of sexual assault and an armed robbery twice. It's that she has low brain waves in the left side of the brain, which is one of the markers for depression. So the trauma, it's creating anxiety, it's creating hypervigilance. In the yellow square shows the area of the brain that helps you be calm, and that area of the brain is not working well, meaning she's not being able to calm herself. She's anxious, but she's also manifesting symptoms of depression. So we have 2 trauma victims of similar circumstances, yet their brains are showing something different. And if we see it here, we can see the color images, meaning this is a map of the brain where we were seeing the activity in the green square. So this is going to be shown on the map like this. And you can see that she has more alpha brain waves and theta brain waves. Theta brain waves in the red, alpha brain waves in yellow. More in the middle section of the frontal region, meaning your cingulate gyrus, and on the left frontal brain, which is your emotional brain. And that's called an asymmetry because there's more on one side than the other. They're out of balance. They need to be equal, and the left hemisphere has more, the right hemisphere has less. And that's one marker for depression. So this is a lady who needs to do brain spotting for the traumas, but we also need to treat the depression and the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And if you look, the regions of the brain for her are different to the regions of the brain in the previous client. While she has activation in the frontal region of the head, the cingulate gyrus, she has no activation of the right temporal cortex, meaning the area of the brain that's screaming for help for her is this area of the brain in red. And this means depression. This means low impulse control. It means a lot of fretting, rumination, repetitive thoughts, repetitive intrusive thoughts. I'm not good. It happened to me because I deserve it. I'm a bad person. I cannot calm myself down. So it's an ongoing loop, and it's a full circle, close loop of repetitive information. So we can see that this brain is different from the previous brain. But with brain spotting and heart rate variability, we can help that. So now this is a male, and this is a very different one from the other ones. I don't have the raw EEG, but I have the yellow peaks. And the yellow peaks are mostly on the slow side. So this is a client who tends to dissociate as opposed to be hypervigilant. When you have peaks to the left of this little line right here means that you are more on your parasympathetic. You are tired, you feel helpless, you feel depressed, and you dissociate. And this is a client who highly dissociates. Now, the other interesting pattern is that when I saw this, I asked him if he was smoking marijuana, to which he replied positively. He says, yes, I smoke marijuana because it helps me sleep, it helps me relax, okay? So what we have here is a client who's using substance to dissociate, to calm down. But the problem with the chronic marijuana use is that the client is gonna start losing cognitive processing. So while marijuana is not as aggressive as cocaine or crack cocaine or heroin, if it is used chronically, if it is used repeatedly, it will slow down your cognitive processing. So it's gonna affect your intelligence, your learning, everything. And this is the case for him. And this is a male who was a victim of neglect. His father left them when he was very little, and he was raised by his mom, but his mom was addicted to alcohol and cocaine. Yet, another brain that processes trauma completely differently. And in the purple, you can see the slow activity. And you can see the areas of the brain that is affecting. This is verbal processing. So this is the ability to produce eloquent, flowing speech. This is memory and learning. This is self-regulation. So as you can see, the traumas plus the chronic use of the marijuana are not helping him feel better. And we could go on and on. I want to stop here finally because I want to show this brainwave pattern. It's called the new rhythm. It's called new brainwaves. And if you see new brainwaves in a client, they tend to correlate with high dissociation and sometimes with DID, dissociative identity disorders. Not everybody who has mu in the brain will have DID, but a lot of the clients will. And so what we're seeing is the neuronal patterns, the neuronal blueprint for the trauma. And we can see the changes in brainwave activity with these techniques. So I'm going to fast forward here and talk a little bit about more heart rate variability because that's the objective. Okay, so I'm going to stop at this slide because it's very important. When we do heart rate variability, we're going to talk from the parasympathetic and sympathetic perspective. And the heart is going to communicate with the brain via the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is going to be your liaison point. It's going to be the one nerve that is going to transmit information from the heart to the brain. And the pathways are 95% afferent. Afferent means that they go from the body to the brain. That means the communication travels 95% from the heart to the brain. We can influence what the brain is doing by changing heart rhythmicity. And the only non-invasive way of doing it is by doing heart rate variability biofeedback, okay? So that's one of the main reasons why we want to use HRV, because it's non-invasive and it's highly effective. Now, when somebody's traumatized or is anxious or is depressed or is anxious or depressed or stressed because of trauma or traumas, the heart rhythmicity is going to change. And that is going to affect specific regions of the brain. One of them is the brainstem, which is important for temperature regulation. It's important for breathing. It's important for appetite, okay? And in the brainstem, it's going to affect a specific region called the medulla. The medulla contains structures called chemoreceptors. And those chemoreceptors in the brain direct us on how to breathe. If I have a tendency to breathe fast and to be excited, in general terms is because those chemoreceptors are overactive. And how do they get overactive? Well, through the interaction of nature and nurture. So the environment plus my life history are going to interact to determine how I do things, how I feel about things, and how I think and behave. So those chemoreceptors can be trained and reprogrammed to do optimal breathing. On average, adults around the world have a baseline breathing rate of 15 breaths per minute. And that means there's sympathetic activation. We need to train people to reduce the breathing, okay? When they reduce the breathing, the other region of the brain that's being directly affected is the hippocampus. And our hippocampus is very important for two main reasons. One, it's our biography. So my life history and things that have happened in my life are going to be stored in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is also important for learning and memory consolidation because the brain cells, the neurons that help with memory and learning are born in the hippocampus. They then migrate, they move to other areas of the brain via glia cells and other types of neurons. But in essence, those neurons are born there and help us remember and help us learn. So when clients have, trauma clients particularly, have a hard time remembering, have a hard time with memory, is because those neurons in the hippocampus are being affected. And one of the things that happens is that memory and learning are highly hindered in trauma clients. And the hippocampus is also very, very, very important because that's when we make new brain cells, is the site for neurogenesis, meaning every new neuron that we make is produced in the hippocampus. So it's neurogenesis, making new neurons, it's learning and memory consolidation, and it's also our biography. Now, when somebody is highly traumatized and is experiencing the effects of trauma via different interactions, what the body is going to produce is called cortisol. And cortisol is the hormone, is the stress hormone. And cortisol is highly inflammatory. And one of the reasons why the hippocampus is so important is because if a client is very depressed, is really stressed, is really anxious, it's very hypervigilant, cortisol is going to get to the brain, is going to go to the hippocampus, and is going to kill neurons. So one of the reasons stress and anxiety and depression are so detrimental to us, it's because of the cortisol that will go there and kill those neurons. But there are ways to counteract it. You know, just like there's good, there's bad in the universe. And the same thing happens within our organisms. When we breathe properly, and when we apply movement or exercise, our brains are going to secrete something called BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotropic factor. And BDNF, is a neuroprotein. It's a growth factor, meaning is the substance that helps us make new neurons. So when you exercise, when you meditate, mainly when you exercise, you're going to make BDNF, meaning you're going to make more neurons. You're going to stay young, you're going to stay happy, you're going to stay sharp. So why we need to produce BDNF? Because BDNF makes us, helps us make new neurons, so helps our brain stay young. And two, because it neutralizes cortisol. So BDNF is the cortisol buster. All right, so we have cortisol, but we exercise, we meditate, we practice heart rate variability. We're going to make more BDNF, and it's going to neutralize the cortisol. Our brain is going to stay protected. So that's an important area of the brain. Then we move to the amygdala, which is our reactive center. It's our emotional memory storage. When we undergo a trauma or a series of traumas that have a high emotional content to them, sexual assault, violent crimes, natural disasters, those events tend to have a high emotional charge, and those emotions and the memory related to that emotion is going to be stored in the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is about the size of a peanut. Is very, very small, yet very, very, very powerful. Meaning the amygdala is what can make our lives a nightmare sometimes. When we have the flashbacks, when we're highly anxious, when we see, let's say I was attacked by a male on an alley, and every time I see a male with the same characteristics as my attacker, my amygdala is going to go crazy, is going to activate, is going to send that signal. So that's why clients tend to react to situations that will remind them of the trauma, and it's because of the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is going to share pathways, is going to share connections with the frontal and prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is how we react instinctively, part of the reptilian mammalian brain. Okay, so it's reactive instinctively, running, escaping, fighting, survive. Your frontal cortex and prefrontal cortex are part of the neocortex, which is the Homo sapiens in us. So frontal cortex and prefrontal cortex allow us to think before we act. And the amygdala is the reaction that we have, is the instinct that we have. We fight or we escape. The problem is that when we have not processed traumas properly, the amygdala is overreactive and is going to shut down the frontal and prefrontal cortex. That's why clients who are highly traumatized, highly anxious, highly depressive, highly stressed out are more reactive. They don't think. Okay, they just react. So the thing they say is, I blacked out, and the next thing I know is I'm choking her, or I'm beating the crap out of somebody. Okay, it's because the amygdala is hijacking the frontal cortex, so blood flow from the frontal cortex goes down. There's a reduction in perfusion or blood flow to the frontal and prefrontal cortex. It's going to go to the amygdala, and we're going to react instinctively. Now, when we do heart rate variability biofeedback, by changing and optimizing the heart, we're going to reduce activity of the amygdala. And what's going to happen is that we are going then to have a more rational person. So what's going to happen is the amygdala is going to cool down, and the frontal cortex is going to get activated because we're going to get more perfusion. We're going to get more blood flow to the area. And then the person goes, oh, so I don't have to fight you. I don't have to insult you. I can talk with you. I can rationalize. We can be friends. And that happens because of that relationship. So if we're highly traumatized or anxious or we're overly sympathetic, the amygdala is going to run the show. But if we promote that with brain spotting and heart rate variability, we're going to promote more perfusion to the frontal cortex, and we're going to have a client who goes, oh, I get it. Okay, so there's no need for me to feel sad anymore. I don't need to be a victim anymore. I can be happy. So, and that's what we do. And last but not least, we go into the neocortex, the cerebral cortex, which is the most recently evolved part of our brain and is the most important part of our brain in many aspects. Okay, that's what makes us Homo sapiens. That's why we can send men to the moon. That's why we can create new technologies. That's why we can learn a language. That's why you can understand what I'm saying. That's why we can communicate with other human beings. We can, create medicine for illnesses. We can come up with techniques like brain spotting. All of that happens because of our neocortex. Now, there's a structure that's the bridge between the subcortical brain and the cortical brain. So when we're doing brain spotting, or we're doing talk therapy, or we're doing heart rate variability biofeedback, we're using the thalamus. The thalamus is the bridging point, is the liaison between your subcortical brain and your cortical brain, okay? And that's called the thalamocortical circuit, because it's a loop where info from the lower part of the brain fluctuates to the upper part of the brain. And when we are traumatized, the communication between the subcortical to cortical areas is hampered, is hindered, is damaged. And your thalamus is not communicating the information effectively. But when we do heart rate variability, what we're doing is from electrochemical perspective, we are optimizing the communication between your thalamus from the subcortical regions of the brain to the thalamus in the cortical regions of the brain. And just like David says, we need to go subcortical to have a profoundly meaningful experience and to have profound healing. We need to go subcortical, and heart rate variability enhances that process from going from down in the brain to up in the brain. Unless we go subcortical, we're not going to have profound, meaningful, efficacious, effective healing, which is just not going to happen. So one of the limitations that doing just talk therapy has is that we're only operating from the top down. We're only reaching the cortex. We're not engaging the thalamus and going deep into the brain. Now, that's not to say that talk therapy or psychotherapy are inefficient. That's to say they're limited. But brain spotting has its limitations. Heart rate variability has its limitations. However, if we engage a process like brain spotting, and if we reinforce it further with heart rate variability, then we're going to optimize that thalamocortical circuit. And what's going to happen is that the information is going to flow nicely in an organized, efficient manner. It's not a mumbo jumbo and a mixture of information that makes no sense to the client. We can start compartmentalizing the information and giving it more meaning, and that's what makes it more effective. Now, people say, well, yeah, that's really pretty, Santiago, but where's the evidence? Well, here it is. Here's a recording of somebody's brain activity while they were engaged in breathing. Remember that the only non-invasive way of optimizing heart rate variability is through respiration, the breathing process. And we can then have a heart that's disorganized or a heart that's coherent and organized to have a brain that's more coherent and organized. So what these graphs are showing is the heart activity and the brain activity of somebody with a trauma. This is a male, 36 years old, with a history of trauma. And his brain is showing two specific patterns, two distinct patterns. One is that in the arrow below where you see the channel called PZ, that's the parietal region of the brain that's in charge of self-regulation. And what this area of the brain is not doing is not making enough alpha brain waves, because alpha brain waves help you feel calm. He is not making alpha in the back of the brain, meaning he's on high alert. Now, the channel called labeled C3, it's your left sensory motor cortex, which is not only for sensations like cold and heat, but also touch and movement. So it's your sensory motor area. Now, it's also important because that's your mirror neuron system. And what our mirror neuron system does is allow us to communicate from our inner world to the outside world. It's the regions and networks of neurons in the brain that allow us to interact efficiently with other people, to empathize, to socialize, to communicate effectively. And in this region of the brain, which is the left cortex, you see new brain waves. I mentioned them a few minutes ago, and I say they're important. Why are they important? Because new brain waves correlate with dissociation. So this is a client who's very hypervigilant and is highly dissociative. And it's having trouble engaging with the outside world. And when you have a left somatosensory cortex that's highly active with new brainwaves, it means the client cannot emotionally connect with other people. So from an emotional perspective, he's not being able to relate to others effectively. And the reason why he came is because his wife was saying, you know, he's flat affected, he doesn't laugh, he doesn't cry, he's just like a robot. And when we did the brain map, I was able to explain to them why that was the case. So I was able to explain to the wife that her husband is not a bad person, that he's not deliberately trying to be asocial. It's just that his brain is operating this way because of his traumas. Now, this is where heart rate variability comes into play. This is the mu in the raw EEG, in the unfiltered EEG. And this is the peak in the yellow, the peak of the mu when we filter it and present it in a more illustrative way, which is with these graphs. So the red here is the region of the brain where the mu is happening. So the mirror neurons from this area of the brain are not allowing this client to emotionally connect with others. And he's dissociating because he is not making a lot of alpha brain waves down here. So he's hypervigilant, he dissociates, he disconnects from the world. Now, here, it's a recording that I did. So after I recorded the EEG, explained to them what's happening, I said, we're gonna do a test here. Let's do a little experiment. I'm gonna teach you how to breathe in a certain way, and we're gonna see whether that breathing that you're gonna apply, excuse me, is going to change your brain activity and how you feel. So at the bottom, we have the mu in the blue square, and we have his EKG, his electrocardiogram. So I'm measuring both his heart activity and brain activity at the same time. And here's the mu marking the dissociation. The green arrow shows the point where he starts breathing at 5 breaths per minute. So he's breathing very slowly, and he's breathing in a very synchronous and organized way. So it's going, okay, so I taught him how to breathe. And notice how the mu is synchronized, is continuous here, and when he starts breathing, the mu desynchronizes, it flattens out. And what that means from a neurological perspective is that we are breaking the dissociation and the hypervigilance. And if you notice his PZ region, it's making a little bit more alpha. This is alpha brainwaves, meaning he's achieving more control and self-regulation, and he's breaking the dissociation. So this is concrete evidence that heart rate variability helps with brain activity. And if you notice in the previous slide, the peak for the mu was very high and a lot of red here. And as he's breathing, look at how green it gets. The less red we have, the better. The more green we have, the better. And if you notice, the peak here gets lower, meaning his brain is communicating with the outside world. And when I asked him how he felt, he started tearing up. He started crying and said, for the first time in many years, I feel like myself again. And the wife was there, and they were hugging, and they were teary. It was a very, very emotional process, and I was very happy to witness that. But to me, as a scientist, the most salient point is that we have the evidence for that heart rate variability that does affect those changes in the brain. And that's my quest now with brain spotting as well. Now, I want to show you in a more specific way how breathing changes brain activity. So this is a baseline, meaning I recorded a colleague of mine, this is also a mental health practitioner, who tends to have a little bit of extra anxiety. And when I record the baseline, it was with the eyes open. He was just looking at a screen. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular. He wasn't doing anything in particular. And the yellow peaks, the blue and the green, show that he has a tendency for anxiety. So he has fast alpha brainwaves and beta brainwaves, which again correlate with anxiety. And at the topography in the bottom, you can see his anterior frontal cortex, his anterior cingulate, really active, okay? That means he's overthinking, he's fretting, he's ruminating. This is the client that when they have an idea enter their head and they just dwell on it and dwell on it and dwell on it. And it becomes a nightmare because the more they try not to think about it, the more they think about it. And you can see the peaks here, the high peaks in the raw EEG, which are represented by the color-coded graphs here, meaning he's got fast activity. Now, we're gonna make him breathe. So we're gonna start with 7 breaths per minute. So he's gonna do 7 inhaling and exhaling for a total of 7 times for 5 minutes. And look at the peaks. So if you notice here, make a mental note of this. Look at how high the peaks are. Look at how red this is here. Look at how high the oscillations are here. And then when he breathes, look at the reduction in red. Look at the reduction in the amplitude of the peaks, and look at the reduction in the amplitude of the brain waves. And this is happening in real time. This is not wishful thinking. This is concrete scientific evidence that heart rate variability will affect those processes. And if you're interested in incorporating this, you can talk to me, you know, at the end of the lecture today, or in the upcoming days. I would be happy to talk to you more about this. Now, you may not have the technological availability that I have, but you don't need to. You know, what you need to do is do it and show that it has a profound meaning. Now, we're going to continue to breathe, and we're going to do 6.5 breaths per minute. So what we're doing is progressively, we're teaching him to breathe slower. And again, notice the reduction in the peaks. Notice the reduction in his anterior cingulate cortex, and look at how nice and beautiful that EEG looks. Yeah. Chat. Oh, okay. So look at how beautiful it looks. It looks more organized, no high peaks anywhere. I mean, his brain is calming down and saying, thank you for breathing for me. His amygdala is cooling down. His hippocampus is making more BDNF. His frontal cortex is getting more blood flow. So, you know, we're achieving what we set out to achieve. Now we make him breathe even slower. We're going to go to 6 breaths per minute. And we have a little bit more red and a little bit more agitation, meaning 6 breaths per minute is too slow for him. So he needs to practice before he gets to that, to breathe that slowly. Meaning that his ideal breathing rate is between 6.5 breaths per minute or 7 breaths per minute. This in turn allows us to determine the ideal breathing rate for every client, meaning we're individualizing interventions. We're not taking a group of people at random and say, you're going to breathe and let's see what happens to your brain. No. We're doing due process, we're following due process, and what we're doing is we're allowing the client to find out at what breathing speed the heart and the brain are going to communicate more effectively. Okay? And these are Loretta. Loretta is the software that we use to analyze this. These are Loretta images of what happens. This is before the breathing. This is the baseline, and down here is the after. So we did 15 minutes of breathing, sorry, and we measured what happens with the brain. More red, not good. Less red, very good. This is a view of the brain from the top. So it's if I take the dorsal portion of the brain and take off the cap, and I'm looking at the brain from the top. This is looking at the brain from one side. So if I split my brain in half, I take this part off, and you're looking at my right hemisphere from the inside. And to the right is if you cut my brain in half, I take the front, I take the back off, and you're looking at it from behind. So it's the same brain from three different vantage points. In here we have the occipital parietal region of the brain and the right temporal lobe, which is involved in anxiety and trauma. And before he was really active here and here, after there's less red, and this area of the brain is not engaged anymore, meaning it's functioning better. If you look at the top here, you're gonna see more red and less red. Now, this is only after 15 minutes of breathing. Imagine doing this for a few sessions. This brain is gonna look a whole lot better, and that person's gonna feel like $1 million, which is obviously the objective, is what we aim for. But more red, less red means a better functioning brain. And from behind, you can see the same thing. This would be the cerebellum right here. And you have more red at the top before and less red after breathing. So we have an organized, better behaving, better feeling, better functioning brain. Now, we can also do what we call a stress profile, and I'm not going to stop too much here because it's not the objective. But I want to talk about a little bit what heart rate variability is and how it relates to what we do. So heart rate variability is, again, reflective of heart-brain interactions. And what we're measuring is what happens with the rhythmicity of the brain. And this is an EKG. This is a measurement of the heart in action, an electrocardiogram. And you have what you call the QRS complex. So this here is labeled Q, this it's the R, and this is the S, the QRX complex. Now, the peaks are also labeled the normal, which means this is the normal to normal to normal to normal, okay? It's the normal to normal measurement. Thank you. Sorry, my wife was bringing me something to drink. So the normal to normal, okay? And what we're measuring is the time that elapses between one heartbeat and the other. And that's called variability. Notice how here we have 0.859 milliseconds. This is measured in milliseconds. This one is 0.859, 0.793, 0.726. That's exactly what we're looking for. We don't want them to be the same. If this were 0.859, 0.859, and 0.859, for the duration of the assessment, we have an unhealthy heart. And we need to send that person to a cardiologist. Variability means exactly that. It's variable. It's different from one heartbeat to the next. So when we teach heart rate variability, we're teaching the heart to accelerate, speed up, and then slow down. That process, that difference between the speeding up and the slowing down, is what brings us that difference in the end-to-end or the normal to normal. And that creates a healthy heart that at the same time is going to create a healthy brain, okay? And how do we do it? By breathing in and breathing out. We're gonna try and see if the internet signal is strong enough at the end. In the last few minutes, I wanna teach you a breathing exercise that you can practice home. And I'm gonna send Jana a video to her cell phone of an application that I created for breathing that if you email her, she can email it to you and you can practice at home and you can use it with your clients if you want to. Again, We want to reach variability. We want the heartbeat to vary, to be different. And we achieve that with the respiratory process. So we have 4 objectives in heart rate variability. And I'm not gonna dwell too much on this because this is for more thorough, profound training. So if you wanna, if you wanna get trained in heart rate variability, we can certainly talk about this more in detail. But basically, one of the processes is that we want to increase the heart rate, the maximum heart rate, and the minimum heart rate. Now, how does that occur? How does that happen? When we inhale, as we breathe in, our heart rate is going to speed up. The heart rate is going to accelerate. Why? Because we're engaging the sympathetic branch. So breathing in is going to activate all those sympathetic circuits that go to the brain and the heart is going to speed up. As we exhale, breathe out, the heart rate is going to slow down. Why? Because we're activating the parasympathetic branch. So if you think as a sympathetic branch where you're driving a car, if you think of the sympathetic branch as the gas, and then you think of the sympathetic as the parasympathetic as the brake, that's exactly what you're doing. If you sit down to drive a car and you step on the gas, you're gonna go faster and faster and faster and faster. And if you don't let go of the gas and you step on the brake, you're not gonna stop. Eventually, you're gonna crash. That's what happens to the client. Crashing because they're sympathetically overactivated, meaning they have the gas and they're not braking. They get sick frequently, they get anxious, they get headaches, they have autoimmune disorders, they have nightmares, they end up in prison, they end up using drugs, they end up with promiscuity, you name it, okay? And on the other hand, if you step into the car and you're gonna drive and you step in on the brake, you're not letting go of the brake, but you're not gonna go anywhere, okay? And that means the client feels stuck. And feeling stuck means I'm depressed, I'm hopeless, I'm tired all the time, I am indifferent to what happens to me. So you can either step on the brake too much or on the gas too much. And if you drive a car, you accelerate when you need to, and you decelerate when you need to. And that's what we're doing with the breathing. So the breathing is teaching you to step on the gas, and the breathing out, it's teaching you to step on the brake. And when we synchronize the pedals, we have healthier heart, we end up with a healthier brain. So achieving the difference between your maximum heart rate and your minimum heart rate is essential. Now your SDNN is a statistical, it's the standard deviation between the normal to normal. Meaning when we are looking at the heartbeats, from the normal to the normal, we're looking at the statistical variance. Thus it varies. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. And when we reach that process, we are reaching heart rate variability. So the SDNN or the standard deviation from one heartbeat to the next needs to be increased, needs to be larger, okay? And then the other two have to do with the activation of your sympathetic or parasympathetic branch. And I'm going to show you examples of that to know what I mean. So objective number 1, it's to increase the difference between your maximum heart rate and your minimum heart rate. And that we achieve with 2 processes from breathing. One of them is your depth, meaning how deep you're breathing in, how deep you're breathing out. And the other one is the pace or the speed of your breathing. To achieve better breathing, you need to breathe deeper and slower. That's the only way you're going to achieve deeper and slower. Here we have a client who's not breathing too deep or too slow. When the line goes up, they're inhaling. Where the line goes down, they're exhaling. So this is an inhale and an exhale. We cannot see what's happening here because the breathing is not coherent or organized. They breathe in, they breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. They get tired here again. Okay, so you can see the peaks are not too high. When a client learns how to breathe deeper and slower, this is what happens. You can see the up and down in the oscillation, meaning the breathing in and the breathing out, heart rate accelerating, heart rate decelerating. So we have the gas and the brake. We have the gas and the brake. And that's more organized. This is not as organized. This is more organized. And therefore, we have a healthier rhythm. So the difference between your maximum heart rate and minimum heart rate is going to depend on how deep and how slow you breathe. Now, objective number 2 then is the increasing the SDNN, meaning the distance between one heartbeat and the next. The objective with heart rate variability is to have your heart beating slower, so the time between the first heartbeat and the second one is larger. The time that elapses gets more spread out, and that means a healthier heart. If you breathe fast, your heart is going to go tum 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 tum. When you breathe slow, you're going to go tum 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 tum. And that's what we want. The difference between one tum tum and the next tum tum, it's going to be the SDNN. So to illustrate it, there are different systems that you can buy for heart rate variability, and they're going to show you different statistics. This is the SDNN. This is at baseline for the client. The SDNN is 66.91, and you can see it's very disorganized. And upon doing 5 minutes of coherent breathing, the SDNN went up to 82.70. Is there a specific number for clients? No, because everybody's different. We have different ways, different heights. Some of us exercise more than others. Some of us eat better than others. Some of us have underlying conditions. Some of us are healthier. So that's going to depend on the individual. But generally, the higher the score, the better. The higher the higher you can go, it's the better. And if you see, there's a single peak here, which is more organized. Now, for objective number 3 and 4 is increasing the percentage of low frequency. And if you see this graph here, you have 0.10 and to the right and to the left. So any activity that's to the left of 0.1 is going to be your sympathetic branch. If you have a single peak like this, it means autonomic balance. And anything that's to the right is your parasympathetic branch. So if you see for this individual, the peaks are higher to the left of 0.10, which means his or her sympathetic branch is dominant. More anxiety, out of control, rage, anger, intrusive thoughts, etc., etc. And when they breathe, you're getting the gas and the pedal to synchronize. This peak to the right means I'm synchronizing the gas and the pedal. The peak to the left means I'm stepping on the gas and I'm not stopping. And if I don't brake, it's going to be ugly. From an emotional perspective, from a physical, organic perspective, and from a psychological, cognitive perspective. So when we have the peak at 0.1, it means we have achieved the balance. This is somebody who's got the activity mostly to the right of that. And that means they're parasympathetic. This is somebody who's tired, unmotivated, probably has blood sugar issues, probably an autoimmune disorder. They're helpless, they're indifferent. And so emotionally, whatever happens, I don't care anymore. But when we make them breathe, they go in and center themselves, and they say, "Oh my God, this is great. This feels so much better. I'm at peace. What are you doing to me? This is awesome. This is amazing." Some of the reactions that we also see with brain spotting. So we have something going on here. So graphically, you can tell the difference between a client that's out of balance and dysregulated to our clients that's in balance and regulated. Now, with heart rate variability, you can connect the sensor to the client while you're doing brain spotting, and you can record the data at the same time. So you can see what happens at baseline, and you can see how the heart rate variability behaves when they're processing. When they're in deep processing, they go subcortical, they dive into the mammalian and reptilian brains. And you can see the reflexes. Their eyes are wobbling. They are twitching. They're crying. You can see what the heart rate variability is doing, and so you can tell them, look, this is what your body is doing when your mind is processing the trauma or is processing the anxiety. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I think it's a very powerful tool to have. Now, again, here is the distribution. So your sympathetic branch, if you're at 0.1, it's going to be autonomic balance. That's the technical term for this. And autonomic balance equals peace, joy, happiness, forgiveness, a connection with a higher power, you name it. And then to the right is parasympathetic, which again, helplessness, hopelessness, indifference, depression, and it's the whatever side of the equation. So we look for gas versus brake. Now, this is a lot of complex anatomy. I don't want to bore you with that, and it's not the point of the conversation. So at this point, I think we're ready for the exercise. I want to do the exercise, so I'm going to maximize this again. And I'm going to show myself. And what I want you to do is just to model what I'm doing. Jana, if you can unmute yourself for a second, so I can make sure that you're hearing me.
Hello.
Hello. Everything good
Santiago.
so far? With the
yeah,
audio?
it's okay. It's sometimes the connection is a bit slow, but it's okay.
It's flowing. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna try the exercise, and what I want everybody to do is to, if you're sitting on a chair, that's good. If you're sitting on your bed, I would suggest that you try to find a chair to sit on, and that when you sit, your feet are flat on the ground and your knees are bent at 90 degrees. Okay, so your legs are not totally straightened out, they're not totally bent, but you can sit on the chair with your legs bent and 90 degrees, and your feet are flat on the ground. I don't want your feet dangling, because that's going to distract you, and the dangling can change your cardiovascular behavior. So first things first. I don't know if you can see me, but sit comfortably 90 degrees. And what you can do too is, I don't want you to sit all the way straight like this, because what you're going to do is you're going to create more tension on the shoulders, the back of the neck, and the upper and lower back. So what you can do is you can slide forward, and on the chair, you can slide forward a little bit so that you look more like this. You have a more relaxed posture, okay? And you can place your hands on top of your laps, either with the palms up or the palms down. So get really comfortable that way. And again, make sure your feet are flat on the ground. Make sure your shoulders are not, raised up like this. You bring your shoulders down, so you feel like your body is being dragged down by, is being brought down by the force of gravity, and you feel comfortable. So posture is really, really important. If you're going to breathe like this, if you're going to breathe like this, if you're going to be tense, you're not going to allow the flow of oxygen, to naturally go through the body. And so posture is everything. So, get comfortable, slide forward, shoulders down. Make sure that you relax the jaws by separating your lips a little bit. Sometimes when we're tense, we tend to, clench our teeth, and that's not a good thing. So make sure you separate your lips a little bit. You purse your lips a little bit, but they're separated. So your jaws, the upper and lower jaw, are not touching, and you're not creating unnecessary facial tension. And that's the first thing. So once you're comfortable, the next thing I want you to do, and I'm going to open the software for that. Even if it doesn't work now, what we're going to do is that we're going to make it, I'll send it to you so you can practice at home. And again, you can contact me to talk more about this. Now, the next thing is that I want you to place one hand on your chest, and the other hand is going to go on your tummy. Okay, so one hand on the chest, one on the tummy, right on top of your diaphragm. And this is to see, to assess whether you're more of a thoracic breathing, you breathe more through the chest, or you're more of a diaphragmatic breather, which means you breathe through the diaphragm. Ideally, we want you to breathe to the diaphragm. Okay, so we want you to bring the air all the way to your tummy. But it's going to give you a good measure of assessment, so you start knowing your own breathing mechanics. So what's going to happen, if you can see my screen, I have set up this line here to go up and down at 6 breaths per minute. Some of you might find it too slow. So if you start getting dizzy, if you get tingly hands or tingly feet, if you feel more anxious, if you start getting a slight or a mild or strong headache, stop. Don't do the exercise, okay? Because it might be too slow for you. It means that we're saturating your body with more oxygen, and we don't want that. But I'm gonna do 6 breaths per minute, which is average. Now, if you don't feel good, please do not do it. Okay. Now, what I want you to do then is, as the line goes up, I want you to breathe in, and as the line goes down, I want you to breathe out. So you're gonna inhale as it goes up and exhale as it goes down. Up it goes again, so you're gonna breathe in and then you're gonna breathe out, okay? So what we're gonna start doing, we're start gauging how your organism feels, how your mind and your body feel when you slow down your breathing. Again, if you feel bad, do not do it, okay? If you feel good and relaxed, that's good. So we're gonna try it, and when I hit play, it's gonna start moving. Now, it may happen that the connection may slow down and you may not see it flowing thoroughly. That's okay, we'll do another exercise. But we're gonna try it for now. We're gonna try it for about 1 to 2 minutes, and we're gonna see how we feel. So I'm gonna do it with you. I'm gonna lower the camera a little bit so you can see both my tummy and my chest. And we're gonna start. So when I hit play, I want you to see the line going up. You're gonna inhale. And as it goes down, breathe out. So you breathe in and then breathe out. You're going to breathe in and then breathe out. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. And again, you're focusing on the line at the bottom of the screen, the light blue, the ocean blue. And go breathe out. And then you breathe in and you breathe out. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. And breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. We're going to go for 1 more minute. So you breathe in and you breathe out. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly, doing your best to follow the line. Again, if you don't feel good, you can pause and just relax. Just do your best to breathe in and then breathe out. Then breathe in and breathe out. And 1 more, breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly, and go ahead and rest and take a break. Now, some of you might have noticed that you feel more relaxed. Some of you might notice that you feel sleepy. Maybe some of you got sleepy. Some of you might have noticed you got a little bit more anxious or tired. Some of you may have noticed that you got, that you didn't feel anything. Okay, everybody's different. And we have a microphone open, so whoever has the microphone open, please mute yourselves. Thank you. So you're not gonna notice different things. Okay, if you're falling asleep, it's normal. If you feel more anxious, it's normal. If you feel more relaxed, it's normal, but it's good. It takes time and repetition to do it. And we're gonna do a couple of changes here. For those of you who are breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth, I want you to change it. So all of us right now are gonna change the way we're breathing. We're gonna do it again for another 2 minutes, but this time I want you to breathe in and breathe out through your nose only. So you're gonna keep your mouth shut. And you're gonna breathe in and breathe out only through the nose. Okay, that's what we're gonna change. And when I open it for questions, please feel free to share how the experience was, what you felt. But for now, we're gonna practice and tweak it a little bit so we can make it better. Again, breathing through the nose, breathe out through the nose. There's a chat here. Okay, somebody's saying that Alessa is saying she's feeling more relaxed. That's great. More relaxed, a little dizzy. Yep, that's normal. And what the dizziness comes from the gas exchange. When you are used to breathing faster, your gas exchange between your oxygen and your CO2, your carbon dioxide, it's faster. So as you slow down, you are making the gas exchange more equal, and it's normal to feel a little bit more, more dizzy. Somebody says more alert. That's good. Yeah. If you don't feel anything, that's fine. It takes repetition. It's like brain spotting. Sometimes you do, you move the pointer and the person goes, I don't see anything. And you need to do it several times before they find the spot. Somebody says, I feel sleepy. Again, that's normal. It means you're relaxing. We don't want you to relax to the point you fall asleep unless you're doing it at night. We want you to feel relaxed but not sleepy. So we're gonna do it again. So again, we breathe in when it goes up, we breathe out when it goes down, and we're only gonna do it through the nose. Now, the reason I was asking you to place your chest, your hand on your chest or your tummy is because I also want you to notice when you breathe, whether your chest goes up or when you breathe, it's your tummy that goes up as you inhale, okay? The objective is that we breathe through the tummy, the diaphragm, but we're not gonna worry about it for now. So again, hand on chest, hand on the tummy, breathe in, breathe out through the nose. And get ready. We're gonna start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go again. So breathe in through the nose and breathe out through your nose. Unless you have an allergy or some kind of obstruction, please do so by breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. If you don't have any kind of allergy or obstruction, go ahead and breathe in and out through the nose. And notice if there are if anything feels different this time. Breathe in and then breathe out slowly. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. Great. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. Every time you breathe in, you do it through the nose, and you feel the oxygen going through your body, and breathe out through the nose and feel your body relaxing. Your mind becomes empty. You're in the here and the now, and your body's reacting more effectively. Your mind is more at peace. You're more calm. Maybe you feel more positive. You feel alert yet relaxed at the same time. Your muscles feel light. Your body probably feels warm but nice. You feel sleepy, that's fine. For some of you, it's night or late at night, so it's okay to feel asleep. Just don't fall from the chair. Don't fall out of it. Oh, for some of you, it's 1:30 in the morning. Wow. Well, thanks for being here so late or early. But if you practice this, you're going to go to bed and have pleasant dreams. Okay, go ahead, finish exhaling. And we're going to stop. Good. So please comment on the chat how you feel. If you feel better, worse, or the same. Okay, again, feeling better is good. Feeling worse is normal. It takes practice. Feeling the same, it's normal because it takes more practice. Calm and relaxed, that's good. Same, yeah, that's right. Feels better. Perfect. That's good. I like that. Feeling more relaxed. Good. So some of calm, dizzy but sleepy. Yep. Some of you are gonna get sleepy, especially if it is early morning for you. More relaxed. That's great. All right, we're gonna do it one last time. It's hard to do through a nose and nose mouth at first. Yes. Making those changes is a little uncomfortable. I can understand that. It's like something flowing in my back. Good, good. That's what we look for. Now, remember, if you don't feel anything, don't get discouraged. It just takes time and practice. Maybe 6 breaths per minute is not your ideal, breathing rate. So we would need to change that. If you're feeling better, that's great. Now we're going to do it one more time before we open the room for questions and comments. And that is going to be one final adjustment. Some of you might have noticed that when you were breathing, you could hear yourself inhaling and exhaling. Okay, so what I want you to do. Somebody has a question, Nancy. If you can ask that question at the end, I will have Jana organize it, and I'll be happy to address it. So again, you could probably hear yourself going. So some of you are somewhat forcing the air in and out, or you can feel or hear yourselves breathing. What I want you to do now is to keep breathing in and out through your nose, but I want you to imagine that you're in a room surrounded by people, and your goal is for them not to hear you. If you do not hear yourself breathing in and out, the people around you are not going to hear you breathe, inhale and exhale. So the objective now is to breathe in and out through your nose, but I want you to do it as silently as possible, as quietly as possible, okay? And when we finish, you'll let me know whether there's a difference doing that or not, okay? So again, get comfortable, get ready. You don't need to have the hand on your chest or your tummy anymore. If you want to keep them there, that's fine. If not, you can go to your laps, palms up or palms down, whichever is better for you. And we're going to do it one more time. So we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. So again, breathing slowly through your nose, breathe out, and do it as silently as you can. Quietly, breathing quietly, feel the oxygen, breathe out, feel your body relaxing. And again, we're breathing in quietly, and we're breathing out as quietly as possible. We breathe in slowly, and we breathe out slowly. All right, breathe in slowly and quietly, and breathe out slowly and quietly. And you breathe in. As you inhale, you can feel the oxygen. And as you breathe out, you can feel the relaxation. If you're sleepy, that's okay. Just don't fall out of your chair. Don't fall from your chair. And exhale. And you might feel more relaxed. Good. Inhale slowly. And exhale slowly. Very nice. And inhale quietly. And exhale quietly. Go ahead and inhale and feel the oxygen, and go ahead and exhale and feel that relaxation. And feeling and breathing this way quietly through in and out through the nose, and doing as quietly as possible is going to help your body relax even more. You're going to feel that you're not forcing the air in or out. It feels natural. Let's go 10 more seconds, couple of more breathing cycles. Inhale, exhale, and relax. One more. Go ahead and inhale slowly and quietly. And exhale slowly and quietly. And go ahead and take a break. Good work, everybody. Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this a full screen so I can see and hear people. And first of all, I want to take the time to thank you for putting up with me today for a couple of hours. I know for some of you it's very early or very late. I appreciate it. I hope that you learned a thing or two, and that I was able to provide some new material. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is Neuro Santiago, Neuro Santiago. My email is santiago@mentalrelax.com, santiago@mentalrelax.com. And again, the best two ways is to Instagram, Neuro Santiago, or my email, which is santiago@mentalrelax.com. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to ask Gianna, if you can, to sort of coordinate the Q&A, if you can, from your end. If not, then we'll try from here.
Okay. Santiago, thank you very much. It was a very interesting, insightful lecture. A great connection between brain spotting and heart rate variability. And thank you for also bringing the evidence-based data for those practices. And also thank you for your willingness and generosity to share this knowledge with our community.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. So now it's time for questions. So if anybody would like to share anything about the practice or ask anything connected with the lecture, you can just turn on your microphones.
By the way, somebody just asked me to write my Instagram and email on the chat. I just did, so people can go to it.
I can see.
And read it. I could start with Nancy. Nancy, your mic is open, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder, do you want to keep? Okay, you can keep that your slide up there. So I'm noticing that your breathing in time and the breathing out time are not the same length. I just started a heart math program, and I think they're talking about breathing in time and out time, and exhale, inhale and exhale being the same amount of time, and breathing through the heart. So I wonder if you're familiar with that, and what is the difference between the heart math program and this, what you are using?
Well, one of the main differences is going to be the cost. This is an amplifier that's about $7,500, which is more sophisticated and is going to provide you with more, in a nutshell, more data and statistics that the heart math is not going to do. Now, generally, physiologically, it makes a little sense to have the exhale to be a little longer than the inhale, okay? And the reason why is because when people breathe in constantly at the same pace, they tend to remain in sympathetic activation, sympathetic dominance. Now, as you inhale and you pause, you're disengaging the sympathetic branch and you're engaging the parasympathetic branch. So to achieve a little bit of further relaxation, the exhale is a little deeper and a little slower because you want more break than gas, okay? And that's gonna give you the autonomic balance you're using. different systems have different displays. And what you need to do is to adjust it to your client's needs. Now, what we always say here is that the client is the real expert. Okay, the client is going to tell you whether things are working or not, whether it's neurofeedback or brainspotting or hypnosis. You go with what your client reports. If the client reports feeling better, you keep using it. If the client's not feeling better, then you tweak it. You go through that trial and error process so that you can gauge what the frequency is good for the client, and then you go with it. So this is the Nexus. Is more sophisticated. It has more displays than the M-Wave, but the M-Wave, it's a really good system for people to start. And if you like it and then you want to get more into biofeedback, then you can purchase more sophisticated amplifiers. But M-Wave is a good one to go.
So I'm curious about how you incorporate brain spotting with heart rate variability. So do you have them, do you do a section when you start and do a section afterwards to compare, or is it on the whole time?
It will depend on the client, but in general terms, I always start with heart rate variability, regardless of what the client's condition is. Sometimes I will start with brain spotting before neurofeedback. Sometimes I will do neurofeedback before I do brain spotting, but I will always start with heart rate variability. Now, with some clients, you can do heart rate variability for about 10 to 15 minutes, jump into the brain spotting, and close with some 10 to 15 minutes of heart rate variability. With some clients, I warm up with heart rate variability. We do brain spotting. We just do the brain spotting, and I have them practice the heart rate variability between sessions. It depends on the client, and the largest advantage that you have with the technology is that you can adapt it to your needs and your clinical insight and talents, and you can tailor it and adapt it to your client's physiological or emotional needs. There's no one right, wrong, or specific set way of doing this. My recommendation is that you experiment and you see what works for you and your client, and you go with that.
And this machine is at your office, right? So when the client goes home, the client doesn't really have a machine to practice with. So do you just give them this simple exercise they can memorize and then do at home?
I record the session on their phone so that they can review the video and practice at home. Or you can send them home with an inner balance or an M-Wave if they can afford it, and they can practice with that. The fact that one is $7,500 and the other one is just $299 does not make them antagonistic. It's just more affordable, and it's a good it's a good complementary gadget to what you use in the office. So you can either record it on their cell phone and send them home with the video, or you can recommend that they buy an M-Wave or any of those cheap, affordable gadgets that they can use, or they can download a cell phone app. There's many that they can practice with.
Oh, okay, cell phone app. That sounds like a good idea to start with.
Yeah.
Not too expensive.
Well, most of them are free. That's the good thing. And
okay.
there are some that you can, where you can place the finger on the finger sensor, and as they breathe, it will give them their heart rate as well. I don't remember the exact names, but you can email me or message me later, and I can find out what those are.
Oh, great. Awesome. Because I think it's the practice that makes perfect, not just
Yes.
in our offices, but
No.
yeah, especially with this remote sessions that we're doing nowadays. So having something on their own would be great. Thank you, Santiago, for answering my questions.
You're welcome. Okay, I have down here, it says how to get the breathing machine. Okay, if you email me or send me a text, I can send you the email. The one that I recommend is the M-Wave, and you can go to www.heartmath.com, and you can buy an M-Wave Pro or an M-Wave Pro Plus. I'm gonna write it here in the chat. So you can go to that. To find it. So you can get the M-Wave Pro or the M-Wave Pro Plus. Those are two of the affordable gadgets. The M-Wave Pro is about $300, and the M-Wave Pro Plus is going to run about $500. You don't necessarily need the Pro Plus. You can start with the Pro for $300, and that's going to be very useful. And if you need if you need suggestions on how to use it, you can contact me on my email. Now, for the apps, you can go to the App Store or on Android or your iPhone and look for HRV, heart rate variability, and there's a listing of those. I don't really use those. I've seen them in action, and I think they're fine. But I normally have the client record. But if you want to look for those, go to App Store or on your cell phone, Android or iPhone, and just type HRV or respiration applications, and there's a whole lot listing of them. And then you can read the reviews and test them. Like I said, most of them are free. The ones that are not free are $5, $10 tops. So it's not that you or your clients are not going to need to invest a whole lot of money on those. Let's see, somebody's asking here if they can use a stopwatch. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, neurofeedback doesn't have to get too expensive or too high tech for you to use it. What I like about the technology is that it provides the info in real time, and the visual input and stimulation to the client is quite useful. But if you want to use a stopwatch and you know how to do it, yeah, by all means, feel free to do it. I will use the apps because the clients, for the most part, like to see what's happening. And they like to see the before and they like to see the after. That's more motivating if they're doing well. And it also helps generate more adherence to the intervention. Somebody's asking about the breathing rate. Well, the breathing rate you need to assess. And what I would recommend is that if you're interested in learning to incorporate it, that you get trained by somebody. Now, it does not necessarily have to be me. I provide the trainings online, and if you contact me, I'll be happy to do that for you. But it doesn't have to be me. But it's important that you learn more than we learned today in terms of the fundamentals and the basics, and that you learn how to assess the client and how to properly train the client. Now, if you don't do it through me, you can go online and look for high rate variability online training, and you will see the listing of different participants and different professionals around the world who do it. I would be happy to. Again, doesn't have to be with me, but that's what I recommend, that you learn how to assess, how to interpret, how to measure, and it's not too complicated to really do it. Oh, okay. Nancy's asking, what's more effective, 50 minutes straight or 5 minutes 3 times a day? Again, that's going to depend. I like to give breaks. I would suggest they start with for your clients who are novel to this, who are new to this, they start with 2 minutes, rest for 1 to 2 minutes, and then another 2 minutes. And then you do increments of 1 minute. So first they do it for 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 4 minutes, and a maximum of 5 minutes. And I always recommend that they take breaks in between. 5 minutes, rest for 1 to 2 minutes, and then do another 5 minutes. Ideally, you need at least 15 minutes of total accumulated practice throughout the day for this to become automatic. But my suggestion is always give breaks, because otherwise you're saturating the client with too much prolonged continuous breathing. To what extent can we use HRV just for anxiety? No, it's good for anxiety. So the evidence, the published evidence shows that it works for anxiety. it works for depression, it works for trauma and PTSD, it works for asthma, for cardiovascular conditions such as hypertension or hypotension. That it also works for gastrointestinal symptoms of gastrointestinal disorders, gastritis, irritable bowel syndrome, and it helps with sleep as well. Now, it's had its limitations, but you can use it for those conditions that I just listed, and you can also use it for peak performance. So you can use it for your athlete, your musician, your artist, your actor, your CEO, anybody who's looking for peak performance can be used. So again, anxiety, stress, asthma, gastrointestinal conditions, sleep, migraine headaches, peak performance. So if you do Google Scholar search, you go to Google Scholar and you search for HRV, you can get a listing of published research on HRV and different conditions. The ones I mentioned, maybe some are escaping me right now, but the ones I mentioned are what the evidence show. There's good correlation between them, and there's published articles that show that HRV is efficacious for those. Okay. You can use it for panic attacks too. I have used it for clients with panic attacks. I would recommend that you train them to breathe before the panic attack, because panic attacks are usually a disconnection between your amygdala and frontal cortex, and you get the amygdala to be overcharged, and you get all the symptoms such as the chest pains, the left arm pain, the hyperventilation, which makes them think they're going to have a heart attack. So by teaching them to breathe, you're going to help them prevent the panic attacks, and two, you're going to start depotentiating, you're going to start cooling down that amygdala so that you prevent panic attacks in the future. And this is where brain spotting or any other kind of intervention comes in handy, because you can expose them and do a stress inoculation, and little by little teach them to reduce the with the symptoms. Now, another question is inhale or exhale related to anxiety or depression? Yes. Depending on your breathing rate, you're going to feel more anxious or more depressed. Now, if you're doing this with clients who are anxious or depressed, it's normal for them to get an increase in the symptoms in the first few sessions. If you notice that, do not get discouraged. They will level off at some point and then come down. Everybody's different, but again, you need to get trained to assess for what's called the resonant frequency, or the proper breathing rate. So, I appreciate that you want to use the technology. I'm happy that you're interested in this, but if you do, please do get trained and certified eventually. But, train with somebody who can guide you through the process. Bipolar, yes. Somebody's asking about bipolar disorder. You can use it. I don't know that there's too much scientific research with it. You can use it experimentally. I would assume that some clients would respond better than others. With bipolar, what I have to say though is that you need to have the client medicated. They need to be on their medication for it to be more effective and work. Again, I don't know of research. I don't use it with bipolar. I can't think of anybody who was bipolar that I've used it with. But I would suggest test that experiment, but they need to be on the medication. Okay. Somebody asked, what happens to the heart and the brain when we exercise? Well, exercise, as I said, is one of the best forms to produce BDNF. And depending on what type of exercise you're working and how you're breathing, your brain is going to do something different. If you're just doing cardiovascular exercise, meaning you're between 100 and 130 beats per minute, it's going to be different if you're doing more of an anaerobic. You're reaching 170 and plus beats per minute. Generally with cardio, there's more blood flow to the brain, with anaerobic, there's a reduction in blood flow to the brain. But as a matter of fact, I have my brain amplifier with me, and what I'm going to be doing with my fiance is that we're going to measure our brain waves before we exercise on the elliptic machine that we have here, and then we're going to measure brainwave activity afterwards. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm going to be posting those videos and those pictures, and you can see what happens. And it'd be fun for you to watch. I don't know if there are any other questions, comments. Lydia's saying, thank you very much. You're very welcome. Again, it was a pleasure for me to teach this and lecture it. It's a topic that I'm very, very, very passionate about. And I'm glad to inspire more and more mental health practitioners to incorporate these technologies, not because they're necessarily better or worse than brain spotting, just because they are a complement to brain spotting. And I am very, very happy that I have found brain spotting, because it was the answer to many things I was not achieving with neurofeedback and biofeedback. So the two, I have been able to bridge that gap. And again, my email and my Instagram are there. Thank you, Jana and Tamara and everybody at Brainspotting Slovenia. And well, I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Santiago.
Thank
we hope
you.
to see you again too.
All right, well, thank you very much. Please feel free to email me, contact me. If you need additional material, I'll be happy to, provide you with videos. One last thing, I'm gonna write my YouTube channel here. So you can go, there are some videos in English of me doing heart rate variability and some videos of me doing brain map interpretation. So go to YouTube, you can search Brand Neurofeedback, subscribe, and I'm constantly updating videos. Thank you again. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good night, a good day. Stay healthy, most important thing. And I send lots of love to you, and hopefully we'll come out of this triumphant and meet face to face next year in Denver for the conference.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.